So a lot of interesting announcements came out of this festival, right? So first of all, there were 70 exhibitors at this festival. So first of all, I didn't even know there were 70 drone companies in India. So along with this, I tried to look up the entire exhibitor list for this festival because usually with any exhibition, there is an exhibitor list that also comes out. I couldn't find it, but I did find a Twitter thread that lists out like 75 different drone companies in India. So we'll be linking the Notion doc where I've put my research, so you can check it out over there. So there's a lot of companies I had never heard about. On Twitter, I saw pictures of companies I'd never seen before. And it was pretty interesting. So there's a lot of people who did come out to that. And the one interesting picture that I found was of a made in India drone taxi prototype. So basically like this big drone taxi, and there were pictures of like politicians sitting in it. Pretty funny, not really realistic. I don't expect that to happen anytime soon. Okay, now what is important, right? I'll start with one of the less important things, but interesting. There's a company called TechEagle. So they basically did a collaboration with the India Post to deliver mail through drones in Gujarat, right? In the Kutch region of Gujarat. And they traveled a distance of 46 kilometers in only half an hour. So this is pretty interesting. This is an application of drones that we've kind of spoken about before, but kind of not, is basically doing deliveries in rural areas. The kind of application in rural areas we've spoken about before has been that, getting medicines to rural areas, stuff like that. But this is another interesting application, just doing your day-to-day posts through drones. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought I'd mention it. Now, there are a couple of major things that were announced. The biggest one is that Adani Technologies, so the Adani Defense Systems and Technologies Limited, is acquiring 50% stake in a company called General Aeronautics Private Limited. So what does General Aeronautics do? They basically do two main things. First of all, they design drones as a service, but they also have agri-drone products. According to the press release that came out with this purchase, Adani said that they're purchasing them for the agri-drone capabilities and all that stuff. And they also said that they're acquiring them for the AI and ML capabilities that they're developing. But anytime anybody says AI and ML capabilities, my eyes always roll to the back of my head, because AI and ML is just like such a whatever vague term, right? You never know what they're actually talking about when they say AI and ML. But yeah, General Aeronautics is doing some interesting stuff. They have this like agri drone sprayer, and they have a software that helps the drone pilot map the entire area, blah blah blah, do it quite easy. It's interesting. They have other drones that do emergency medical services on national highways. So basically, that like if somebody's injured, they can just shoot up a drone and send it very quickly to that person. It can do 15 kilometers in 10 minutes. Interesting stuff. But why is Adani Defense buying it? I doubt they're buying it for the agri thing. I doubt they're buying it for the emergency medicine stuff. I'm sure there's something that they're doing that we are not aware of. And there wasn't really much information else that was shared about this deal. But Adani Defense is also the same company that set up the first drone manufacturing facility in India. So I'll talk about that again in a little bit. But right now, we are in this part of this whole drone ecosystem where basically Adani and Ambani they're trying to become the biggest drone companies in India, right? So last year, Geo Platforms bought Asteria Aerospace. Asteria Aerospace is this company from Bombay, I believe, that has been around for the last 6 years. And Adani, they have a JV with a company called Albeit from Israel, which basically had these really fancy, really high technology drones, right? That was mainly used for defense. These were super high payload drones that were mainly used for defense. And this was the manufacturing facility that they have in Hyderabad. And so they've been using these drones for reconnaissance at the line of control with China, the line of actual control, and one interesting thing. So when the government came out with all their drone policies over the last 6 months, one of the things that they said, especially in the budget, they mentioned this in the budget, is that there will be a production-linked incentive for drones. I tried to look up before this discussion who are the people who got the production linked incentives. So 14 companies have gotten it, and they're supposed to release the names before 30th June. So it's not come out yet, but I'm interested to see, because the people I spoke to in the drone industry said that it'll probably be big companies like Adani and all who get this PLI. And guess what? This Adani JV has gotten that PLI. So they have gotten part of that money for this factory in Hyderabad, right? So yeah, that was pretty interesting. And I think the next part of this discussion, I kind of want to make it a bridge between drones and what we're going to discuss about defense, right? Because one of the biggest applications for drones is in defense. So, like I said, this Israeli Adani JV venture, they are focused mostly on making military applications of drones. And the question is that who else is doing it, and how much money has the Indian armed forces invested in this, right? So in the last year or so, the Indian armed forces has invested around 500 crores in the sphere of drone technology, which is quite significant considering how young this market still is. And one of the really interesting use cases that they're investing a lot of money in are these things called kamikaze drones or loitering drones. Basically, what they do is they loiter around in an area, and when they see that a target has emerged, then they go and attack it, right? Interesting stuff. So who is getting the contracts for this? So there's a company called New Space Research and Technologies, which was started by a former Indian Air Force officer called Samir Joshi, and he got a $15 million or around 115 crores order for this swarm drone technology. And he's developing this along with Hindustan Aeronautics. For those of you who don't know, Hindustan Aeronautics, or HAL, is one of the biggest defense companies in India. So New Space Research is one of them. Even Larsen and Toubro has signed an MOU with New Space Research for the development of some kind of like submarine launched drones. So now just imagine this. You're a submarine and you're just like floating around in the water, and then you just suddenly launch a drone and that goes around and like tries to attack a ship. I'm not really sure how these things work, man, but I find it quite interesting. Yeah, these swarming drones are a really interesting technology. If you want to learn more about what these drone swarms are, there's a super interesting Forbes article. The Notion page, which has my research, has a link to that Forbes article. I recommend that you read it. Drone swarms are super, super interesting technology.
So drone swarms are very similar to drone loitering or kamikaze drones that you were talking about? Or is this all three same terms?
So it's the same thing, right? Okay. So these are basically swarms, I guess, of drones that loiter around and then they attack when they see the target.
Yeah. Everything that we've discussed so far previously in the previous episodes of drones, I'm going to link that in the show notes as well. But we've been focused more on the B2B side of things, which is, the agriculture part of it, the mapping, geospatial mapping and stuff like that. And we focused on the consumer side of things with deliveries and other things. But one of the things that I've been reading is World War III, assuming it doesn't happen anytime soon, with Russia, Ukraine, China doing something to Taiwan and that leading to World War III. If it happens in a few years down the line, there's a big chance that a majority of that is going to be fought with drones instead of people on tanks and stuff like that, right? Which is why it becomes extremely important for the government to now actually recover the innovation loss that's happened over the last 6 years and actually pump in money and get this industry going. And in that sense, I like the idea of Adani, Ambani, Tatas getting into this industry because they have the dry powder to actually kickstart this industry, right? It is, at the end of the day, still a risky bet because you're talking about technology that might or might not work. And you need that kind of precision, especially when you're talking about defense drones and stuff like that. You can't have, 1% error or 2% errors and stuff like that.
There's this Turkish drone, I forgot the name, but that Turkish drone is being used in a big way in the Russia-Ukraine war right now. And what we're going to see, I think, is we're going to see a lot of these Indian companies, Tata, Ambani, Adani, etc., doing these kind of JVs where you're seeing between Adani and that Israeli company.
Yeah.
Because these Israeli my God, these Israeli companies are just way ahead in technology compared to everybody else in the world. And we're going to see a lot of these people going to Israel, going to Turkey, going to these other places and doing these JVs. That's the only way I see it happening.
Yeah.
Our R&D is too far behind.
Yeah. But one of the mistakes that I hope we avoid is when we do these partnerships, we should probably get the technology know-how in India rather than being dependent on them for technology and just manufacturing in India, right? Like the low-end manufacturing versus proper drone manufacturing. I hope we get that right. And it's obviously easier said than done, but hopefully it works out. It's one of the things that that is related to defense, and therefore it makes sense to have the technology in-house.
Yeah, so these are those technology transfer kind of deals which can get quite complicated. Before we move on, just one thing I want to mention really quick. So IdeaForge, we've spoken about IdeaForge before. It's a company from Bombay, and they've been around for I think since 2016. They raised a Series B or Series C round of $20 million a couple of months ago. I think it was in March or April. So quite recently, Series B. And they also have a $20 million order from the Indian Army for what are called switch drones. So you can look up what switch drones are to see exactly how it helps. But these, so you're seeing these big orders coming out from the Indian Army. Like I said, 500 crores already out for drones. I'm sure there'll be a lot more that will come out in the next few years.
What's funny is a company like IdeaForge, which probably is in a very capital intensive business with drone manufacturing and doing R&D, has raised a 20 million Series B. And if you rewind just 1 year back in sometime in 2021, mid 2021, consumer companies that were running on discounts were getting $20 million to build their business. It's an interesting comparison on where the money is going and the kind of returns possible from these companies.